I've been playing a lot of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater recently, and I've actually been playing through it over on my Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays. That'll be in the description down below if you're interested playing through that with a friend of mine. But I have been thinking about something recently, and I think it's a thought process that's popped up for people on and off ever since Metal Gear Solid 5, and ever since the departure of Hideo Kojima from Konami. And that is the simple and yet also very complicated question: could Metal Gear Solid work? Could a new Metal Gear game work without Hideo Kojima? Now today I wanted to take a look at where Konami is officially at with this, because there actually are developments around the franchise that point to it possibly going this direction, where Kojima is at with this, and also in general, the pros and cons of it, and if other series have had similar, issues, like if other series have gone on past their original creator and had good or bad experiences. So I'm going to try to do this as succinctly as possible, but I do have a question of the day for you in general, which is, if there was something else, another brand new story with Metal Gear, not a remake at all, nothing like that, but a just new story, what would you want it to be? I know we've talked about remakes of Metal Gear Original 1 and 2, but I feel like there's a lot of stories that haven't been told at all that could actually fill out this universe even further. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below. Now here's the thing, there have been actual comments from people around Konami regarding this, and one of those people, and one of the people I respect the most who's spoken on it, is David Hayter. Now some people might look at David Hayter and say, oh well, what does he know? He's just the voice of Snake, and sometimes the voice of Big Boss and stuff, like what would he know about it? Well, actually, David Hayter knows a lot more about writing than I think many people know. David Hayter has been a screenwriter for his entire life as well. I mean, his professional life. Like, for example, he actually helped write movies like X-Men 1 and 2. So he's not somebody who is divorced from the writing side of video games, movies, of any of these things. He understands how it works. And he's a damn good writer too, I think. And he talked a little bit about this idea when asked if this could work without Hideo Kojima in terms of there being more games, and he actually did show some positivity around the idea, saying, I think it's absolutely possible. Saying, will it be the same without Kojima? No. There's no way to replicate Kojima's exact genius, his exact weirdness, his specific personality. However, he did go on to also say that when I was a kid, I loved Tim Burton's Batman, and I was like, that's how Batman should be done. And then Chris Nolan does Batman, and you're like, oh, well, that's pretty badass as well. So will it be the same? No. Could it be amazing though? Sure. And this is something that I want to talk about for a few minutes later on, the idea of other properties and other stories transcending beyond just their original creator, but I did also want to say that there are other comments around this as well. Like, for example, the current Metal Gear series producer Noriaki Okamura, who did work with Hideo Kojima in the past and has been at Konami for many, many years, who said, with many of the original staff members now pursuing new paths, we are aware that there are still elements lacking in our ability to fill the gaps left by their departure. This wasn't just about Kojima, it was just about a lot of people who worked on these games, saying, through the development of MGS Delta, we have also gained a new sense of what our team is capable of. And of course, as well, going on to essentially imply with that they are actually taking the lessons of something like MGS Delta in order to kind of learn how to make Metal Gear again. And I find that interesting because it does kind of also point to a lot of other creations. Now here's the thing, for every example of a game, movie, whatever, that moved past its original creator and still made things, there are bad examples too. You look at the Terminator franchise. The first two movies are by and large the best, but there are other things in there too, some clunkers. There's a few that are actually pretty good. Terminator Salvation, fun movie. You have things like the Terminator game, Terminator Resistance, very good game. I'm just kind of pointing out some ideas here. You have movies like the Alien franchise, where Ridley Scott was involved in directing the original movie, but not really a ton with writing type stuff. And then you actually have him kind of come back and do prequels, and people were really torn on those. I liked them a lot, but some people didn't. But you also have James Cameron coming in and making Alien 2. Fantastic movie. I think people like Aliens. They love that movie. Batman is a great example too. I think comic books in general, they're a very difficult example to look at because for every good comic book, there's probably 2 or 3 bad ones. I think the mediocre to bad actually almost outweighs the good in the medium, but only because of the breadth of the work. There's too much. You know, it's like constant reboots, multiverses, all these different things. There's a lot of things that are just okay to bad, but if you actually look at really good comic book characters, you look at stories like about Batman and Spider-Man, for example, 2 of the biggest characters in fiction. There are amazing stories that were told without their creators because they were told decades later and they were still able to make them. You know, actually the Tim Burton to Christopher Nolan example of Batman is a perfect one. In the late 80s, you know, going into the 90s, yes, that was not a very comic accurate Batman, but to a lot of people that was a definitive Batman experience. And now you ask people what's a definitive movie Batman experience for you, they're going to tell you something like The Dark Knight. Same character, different version, but it's a story that was able to be told with that character without the original creators. And I look at even Metal Gear with this as well. Yeah, there's some rocky issues here, like for example, Metal Gear Survive. Fun way to play around in the Fox engine, but it doesn't exactly have like a great story or anything, right? It was very clearly Konami trying to make something out of the Fox engine and the money that they put into MGS5. That's an example of probably how to not do it. But then you also have things like Metal Gear Acid. Those were told essentially without Hideo Kojima for the most part, and they're fun games. You have something like Portable Ops. Kojima had a limited amount of input on it, and because of that, its canonicity has also been questioned back and forth between multiple comments made by Kojima and other people. But for the most part, people enjoy Portable Ops. It was considered overall a pretty good game on the PSP, especially in the Metal Gear series. When you have Metal Gear Rising and you have Kojima throwing a couple ideas out there, but essentially just Platinum Games just doing the game by themselves, making it their own thing, that's not a Kojima production. That was a Metal Gear game without Kojima. This has actually been done before, and while it has been to varied results, I would argue that a lot of the games Kojima was not involved with were still good Metal Gear games, with the exception of Survive, and even that is still fun in a way, because you get to play around in the Fox engine with survival elements. It's not a, hardcore Metal Gear game experience, and I know a lot of people don't want to say anything positive about that game, but it does still take the positives of what Kojima put into the franchise gameplay-wise with his development team and turn something out of that. When I'm looking at this idea too, like for me, I know that my ideas will never be taken by someone like Konami because I'm just some white guy living in America. Like I'm not at, Konami, I'm not in video game development. I'm just an idea guy. I'm just somebody who loves writing. I mean, I do have a writing degree, but I'm someone who loves writing. I love stories. I look at these characters and I look at a whole trilogy that could be told essentially around the snakes. Almost the Sons of Big Boss trilogy. You look at Liquid. There's a lot of years in there between MGS5 with Eli's appearance and also the beginning of MGS1 where you could have an entire game focused on Liquid as a protagonist. There's a lot of years in there with Solidus. You could have an entire game focusing on Solidus as a protagonist and actually flesh that character out so that by the time he appears in the MGS2 story, you've actually gotten to know him on a deeper, more personal level, and maybe gotten to see his manipulation by the Patriots, all these different things that led him to the point where he's at in MGS2. I've already talked as well about the lost years between something like Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, but also even 2 and 4. There are things that could be done with a character like Solid Snake or Raiden in that era. I mean, I think I'd prefer Solid Snake. I'd love to see a sequel to Rising for Raiden, but I think that there's something you could do there with an entire trilogy around those characters, those essentially sons of Big Boss, and then you cap that off with a game about Venom, leading into the original Metal Gear 1. And yes, I know that there were implications from MGS5 that were leading into Metal Gear 1, but in general, the ending of Metal Gear Solid 5 was pretty rushed. I think it's unfortunate, that was rushed. I think it's unfortunate that there's many years unexplored of these characters, And I don't think you need to explore every second of their lives. But when you're looking at these, and you're looking at possible remakes of Metal Gear 1 and 2, stories that could involve the snakes we haven't seen being playable essentially as main characters like Solidus and Liquid, the return of Solid Snake, the fact that there are whole years gaps in his life that could have missions in them, that you could bring back people like David Hayter and actually do things with that. I don't think that Kojima not being here is really the end-all be-all. And I think that that's really also shown by the fact that people gloss over people like Fukushima, who helped especially with writing and co-directing games like Metal Gear Solid 2 and was involved in the writing of MGS3, and people just overshadow that guy just to look at Hideo Kojima. I think there's already many people involved in the Metal Gear series who haven't gotten attention and have not gotten praise or recognition that they deserve, not because Kojima is like some kind of spotlight hog, I'm not saying that, but because he was kind of positioned as a face at Konami for many years. He was someone who was very good with the press. He's likable. He's very good at interviews. He's someone who also does know his stuff. He does know video game development. He's not just a, he's not just a poser. He's not just an executive. He's somebody who really did hands-on get down in the mud with these games and was integral to them being made in many cases. But I also think there are other people who made games essentially without him already, and there were people who made games right alongside him at the same time who unfortunately did not get that praise that they deserved. So between the comments already coming from people who are representatives at or around Konami, from the past and the games that have been made, from the past of other franchises that have gone on to make really good things, I don't really see why this couldn't work. I think it would need to be done intelligently. I think it would need to be done partially with fan feedback. You do need to see what people are actually interested in. Metal Gear fans are not easy to please, so that's definitely something. It needs to be done with soul and the intent to actually make art, something good. Nobody has a problem with Konami making money. I don't think anybody has a problem with the development studio or the production studio or whatever you want to say making money over the IP. That's fine. But I think it has to be done for the purpose of creating something good, not just for the purpose of money. And that's where I think the problem came with something like MGS Survive, or Metal Gear Survive, I should say, because it's not even really solid. I think the problem with that was you were trying to recoup costs from MGS 5. So you essentially just made something out of the ruins of that game, not actually because you wanted to make something new and good. And I think that's where the soullessness aspect can come in with these things and be a huge detriment. You have to avoid that pitfall if you want to ever continue in any meaningful way beyond just remakes. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. I am always interested, and Metal Gear fans are very passionate. I've always said Kojima deserves his flowers, very talented guy, but I also don't think that he's like a god when it comes to this series or when it comes to anything. And I think it's okay to also acknowledge the other talented people who were involved in these games or who could be involved in these games. There might be someone out there who grew up playing MGS 1, 2, and 3, and maybe 4, who now went on into a writing field experience that might have really good ideas for this series. Just because he's not named Hideo Kojima, or she or whatever is not named Hideo Kojima, doesn't mean that they don't have good ideas. But you have to find those good ideas, and you have to have soul. It can't just be a product. Metal Gear was never just a product, and that's one reason why people loved it. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. Leave a like, subscribe, those things help, hype the video, whatever you want to do. Helps me a lot. If you want to support this channel, we have a Fortnite code, DJAY123. That helps me out a ton every month, those of you who use that. Very special to me, I appreciate you. We have channel memberships where we have exclusive videos, so those will be on this channel as well. The tiers I've tried to make extremely affordable, actually really cheap compared to a lot of the people I see doing these. I just want people to be able to support and get some extra content. And then we do have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop. Coasters, keychains, trays, and more. Are you a one-of-a-kind person? I think you are. We all are in our own way. Well, maybe you want one-of-a-kind things to surround you in your home. These are made from comic books, manga, magazine, all these different things that are damaged, these books that are damaged. What we do is we take the paper that's not damaged or is savable, we actually transformatively use that in a new medium as part of a new art piece, and then we recycle the rest of that paper. Discount code DJAY123 gets you 10% off your first purchase. We actually have a lot of new products up over there as well. Maybe you don't need a keychain or a coaster. They also work as well for backpack charms, and slap a command strip or something like that on here. Great piece of art on your wall. That's something we've done at home. So all kinds of ways to use that stuff. We appreciate you. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.